Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Avorion episode 14. I'm Enigmius, and today we're continuing with the Melapes, our second ship build. And this is the one that's supposedly going to be taking advantage of the lessons that we learned with our first ship build. And specifically what you're seeing right here is the placement of a titanium generator. Now, the whole idea behind this build, the same as the last build, is that I'm building this with materials that I would have access to in the very first system where you start the game. So there are advanced materials that we could be using, because this is creative mode where we're building, that would make for a faster, stronger, more robust, better ship. But if we don't have access to it in the starter sector system, whatever we're calling it, then it's no good to me. So in this case, I wanted to make sure. I knew that I'd encountered a couple of titanium asteroids, and I also knew that while I was flying around in my little drone after one of the impromptu space battles, that I had picked up some titanium as salvage from some of the ships that were kind of floating around, or the burnt out hulls of ships that were floating around. So I went into that save and looked specifically at my inventory to see how much titanium I had, and then based the size of the titanium generator in this ship on that. So I had 782 titanium in my ship in the PvE survival kind of setup. So this titanium generator uses 780, and the idea now is that when I go to move this ship over to the not creative side of things, I will have the titanium already so that I can build the ship and not have to worry about trying to get resources that wouldn't be realistic for me to get. For example, titanium asteroids, there's a very small number of them from what I've seen. They do exist in the starter sector, and they're a fairly easy source of titanium. The only other way to get titanium, if you've exhausted those asteroids, is to either leave the system, go to another one and get the titanium there, which we aren't ready to do yet, or salvage from blown up ships, which is not necessarily the best situation to put ourselves in, given that our last ship wasn't really suited to combat. And if we're building this ship on the assumption that we're going to have more titanium than we do, then we're not going to have the benefit of being able to use the ship, because we won't be able to build it without the titanium. So that kind of explains a big chunk of the reasoning why you're going to find that with this build in particular, we're going to be power bound, which is to say we can only produce a certain amount of energy based on the basic 500, I think it's megawatts that you start off with. Just by building a basic ship, you get an allowance of 500 megawatts of power to drive all of your systems. With the titanium generator that we've added, it's up to, I think, 1.79 gigawatts, which is a little more than 3.5 times more than what we started with. So we have more than we would with the basic kind of ship. But relative to the size of this ship, I'm getting the very distinct impression that it's still going to be a little on the low side when we try and increase the ship's maneuverability by adding things like gyros and inertial dampeners and directional thrusters and all these other things. They all require power, and in order to get any kind of meaningful adjustment to our handling characteristics, will require more power than we're actually going to have access to at the beginning. The nice thing, however, hopefully, is that this ship will be robust enough that we can take it into the next sector once we've sort of cleaned out the first one for everything that we can find, and be able to upgrade it as we go. So that'll be an interesting part of the learning experience as well. Now, you probably noticed that the background color, the background theme just changed rather abruptly. And that was a result of another attack, another enemy ship attack. This thing is just not ready. And this is the only viable ship that I have in this environment. So when I get attacked, usually I kind of take stock of the situation. I'll look around and see how many AI friendly ships are nearby that could maybe come and assist. Essentially what I'm looking to find out is whether or not if this is just gonna be a brief disruption, or if it's gonna be sort of a longer term scenario. And I was pretty convinced, based on the amount of fire that I ended up taking, that it was gonna be just a lot quicker and easier for me to create a new creative environment, load this ship into it, and then continue the build. And that's why we have the different background, is because it's a completely different system that we're in. You can see we're putting in a lot of engines into this ship because I wanted to get the speed up. I wanted to also get the acceleration up. So it's all well and good to have an aggressive top speed, but it's not very helpful if you accelerate so slowly that you never actually reach that top speed. I think we ended up, after all of the engines are placed, at just over 600 meters per second as our top speed without boost. I haven't tried it with boost because the braking force is absolutely horrible right now. We're far from finished with the build. There's going to be all kinds of other things that will be added that will help with these different parameters as we progress. But just kind of looking at things for right now, you know, it's got the potential to move very quickly compared to our previous ship and of course our drone. But it's not going to reach that speed very quickly at all. And it's once you get up to that speed, you better hope that you're not heading in the direction of something you don't want to hit, because about the time you realize you're going to hit it, it's too late to stop. It's probably also too late to turn out of the way. So we've got lots of work to do. Now, I didn't really have necessarily a set plan for how I wanted this back section to look. All I really knew was that we had this big opening, that I needed more engines than I had in the previous ship. We had hardly any in that little guy, but I definitely wanted to increase the number of engines that we had. And I just kind of started stacking things into this opening that we had in the back of the ship, with the whole idea that it's not going to take long to reorient things, to move things around, to change things if I don't like the way it looks. I actually kind of like the way it turned out. It's very simple, straightforward. It's kind of interesting to look at, but it's also very easy to look away from it. It's not this mesmerizing kind of thing that has you constantly staring at it when you should be looking at other stuff. But then that left this big opening in the middle, and I thought, what better way to finish off this large collection of engines than with one absolutely massive engine just kind of sitting in the back. So that's what I did. It looks like it's split into 4 right now just because of the translucency of the mirror planes. Once we turn off the mirror planes or exit build mode, those go away and all you see is the big bulky engine in the back surrounded by all the little engines. So that was kind of fun, and I decided I would take it out for a little bit of a cruise. So I hired the necessary people. Mostly I'm interested in the engineers so that we get the speed and the handling characteristics up to what one might expect them to be. But I decided while I was here I might as well kind of hire what I thought I would need for the other things that we were going to have on the ship. Completely forgetting that I hadn't put any crew quarters on the ship yet, so we had to add that before everyone got sad, because we were just basically tethering them to the interior of the ship in spacesuits and expecting them to do their jobs. So you can see we do the assignment, we get one of the officers because we had so many other people, we needed an officer to keep an eye on them. Continue hiring, because the hiring interface, I have to say, is one of the worst things about this game. It's really quite awful. But we got what we needed so that if I had to move the ship, I could. You'll notice in this case, I'm right beside a shipyard. That's going to be my new standard setup procedure, is to, whether I'm starting a new game or whether I'm starting a new build, it's going to be make sure wherever I am, it's right next to a shipyard, so that when it comes time to hire the people, we can hire them. I actually, when I loaded this in, the second time after we were attacked and I decided to leave and start over and do all that other stuff, I loaded the ship in and then hopped into it where we started in the new sector, and flew all the way to the shipyard at something like a top speed of 48 meters per second, and a boost that only lasted for about 10 seconds and then took somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds to recharge. So I learned my lesson. From now on, we don't start building ships unless we're next to the shipyard, and it's all just so that we have access to the crews. I've also, however, found in this most recent sort of situation that being right next to a docking clamp or a docking node on a shipyard makes it so that if you do come under attack while you're building the ship, it's much quicker and easier to repair your ship than if you were to try and go around and do it manually. And you see, I've created this sort of the beginning of what will be an enclosure on the top and the underside of the ship, because remember, we do have mirror mode on the X and Y axes turned on. So whatever we're doing on the top of the ship is also happening on the underside. And I just put in a bunch of directional thrusters and various doodads. And what I didn't really pay attention to was my power consumption. In this case, it wasn't too bad. Getting them all in place, they aren't very thick, you know, in terms of the volume that we're dealing with inside this enclosure. It's not very thick. It's kind of wide. It's got a certain, a certain amount of length to it. But taken as a whole, it's not an enormous amount of equipment that I just added. And so the power requirement isn't outrageous, but the performance increase isn't that great either. It's kind of one of the things that you add with the understanding that you'll be continuing to add in other places as well, and then individually they'll come together and form the sum total of what's needed. In this case, it's a little ways off the sum total of what's needed. I decided at this point, you see, I'm placing turrets, and the whole idea here is the ship, we've got crew on it now, so we can actually use the turrets. If we get attacked, I would like to be in a position where hopefully we can defend ourselves to at least some extent and prevent that time-wasting aspect of, watching our ship shoot to pieces and either having to sit and wait through it or start over and reload the ship kind of thing. So putting the turrets on, I put the mining turrets where I thought I put the Gatling turrets or the chain gun turrets, whichever they are, and it confused me for a little while, but we got it sorted out. So we've got 2 weapons and 1 mining turret attached to the ship. That's all we're allowed to have. And then I decided to do a little bit of flying around just to get a sense of the maneuverability, all the different categories of movement, and bang, I smashed into the station and broke that entire part, that whole ribbed section. When we hit it, we did 600 and some odd damage, and it was destroyed instantly, and we lost reputation with the owners of the station for it, which, when we went to the docking node and repaired our ship and paid for them to repair our ship, we gained more reputation from that than we lost from destroying about a third of the station with an unintentional collision. So as far as this ship's ability to ram things, if I can hit it, it's going to hurt. That's something that we can carry with us as we're making decisions of a tactical nature in the future. It's possible that the ramming damage of the ship is probably its most dangerous characteristic when it comes to doing horrible things to the enemy. So based on that performance of the ship and kind of looking at that section, that little narrow, a little bit wide, not very high, kind of long than we had before, I decided that I wanted a little more room. And I also have some ideas for the front of the ship that involved having these things on the top and on the underside towards the rear, farther away from the hull. So I had to build them away. And I decided rather than doing the rework at the beginning of the next episode, I would just take a couple of minutes and do it at the end of this one so that you kind of have an idea of what's going on. And then the next episode, we're going to start working on those other details. Like I say, there's still a lot to be done. I don't think you'll really be able to see it at this point, but yeah, it's already been done. You see those red indicators on the right-hand side of the screen, the text in red? those are things that we're trying to address with the placement of these different things that we're going to be adding. And I did a little bit of experimentation, adding in enough of the different devices that we need to improve the handling characteristics of the ship, and we ended up at 4 times more power than we were able to produce, and the characteristics still weren't that great. So there's we're going to have a lot of room in these sort of outriggers on the top and bottom that we can add things to later, and also there's going to be stuff on the front of the ship and the sides that will help primarily with the, I'm hoping, the one thing that I really want to get taken care of is the braking, because that's sort of the killer right now. Is you can't get to anywhere near top speed if you ever want to be able to stop again. The braking is just so absolutely poor that that's sort of my priority, even before, you know, pitch yaw and roll. So that's going to be something that we'll be working on in the next episode. And it's basically still part of the structure. It's still part of the core of the ship, even though we're kind of working on the outside. I haven't even started in the purely cosmetic things yet. I just wanted to get everything put together with the equipment that we need and get an idea of how the shape of and the size of the ship is going to match with the equipment that we can afford to put in it right now. And once we get that sort of in some sort of equilibrium, then we can look at the cosmetic details. I kind of expect that the cosmetic details won't be extremely large. They aren't going to have a lot of mass to them. I don't want to diminish the performance of the ship. I don't think we're going to be able to afford to diminish it with cosmetic stuff, but I still have some ideas that I want to put in place. The key now is to try and make the cosmetic stuff also functional so that we can justify it. Although, if we wanted to do things by the books for the sake of pure efficiency, we get back to that scenario where everything is just a cube, and it's a very thick cube with thick walls and guns in certain places, and that's the ship, and I just can't get behind that. So, you know, that there's the quest for efficiency, and then there's the quest for you know, the aesthetics and the look, and then there's everything in between, and it's that in between that interests me the most. So it's never going to be the best one way or the other, but hopefully it'll be functional and not look half bad. So this section here, you can see we're spending a lot more time building it up, getting some curves in it, doing some, you know, more refined transitions. And of course, also, it's turning out to be much, much larger than what we originally had. So we will have that flexibility in order to add the equipment as we're able to add the generators once we start gathering more titanium. So I don't even know, quite frankly, how I'm going to handle the blueprint for a ship like this, where we're building it to one standard and with the understanding that as we play, it's going to be upgraded. I kind of think that what I'll end up doing is playing for a little while, getting upgraded to a reasonable standard, and then doing the blueprint, as opposed to doing the blueprint right after a brief shakedown. I think that will ultimately produce something more interesting for people who are taking the time to get the blueprint and bring it into the game and mess around with it. So that's probably what we'll end up doing as far as that goes. But as far as this specific section, it's been a lot of fights that we didn't want, leading to a lot of scenarios that took quite a bit of time and didn't actually contribute a whole lot to the outcome, but still having a lot of fun. It's still very much a new experience for me working through. You see this top section that I put in very, very flat, and that's just kind of a spoiler. Some of the cosmetic stuff we'll be doing will actually be thin sheets of armor on top of structural elements, and that flat section is going to make it very easy to add that armor over these top and bottom outriggers. So we're just messing around a little bit, getting those into place, and getting it ready to receive the equipment that we'll add. So next episode, we're going to continue onward. We're going to be focused, like I say, on getting the braking handling characteristics taken care of, and then you know, buttoning up the structural elements, doing a little bit of cosmetic stuff. And then we'll take it around, and hopefully it'll do what it's supposed to do. So if you want to be notified about the next episode in this and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.